The morning of November 24th, 1955. It was cold and quiet at a small airfield in the Netherlands. A new plane named PHNIV sat at the edge of the runway. A few engineers watched, holding their breath. Then the engines started, smooth, soft, and different. The plane rolled forward, picked up speed, and gently lifted into the sky. No shaking. No drama. It just worked. That was the first flight of the Fokker F27 Friendship. No big party, no loud cheering, but the people who saw it knew this plane was going to be special. Over the years, the F27 became a quiet hero. It flew into tiny towns and remote villages where other planes couldn't. It carried people, mail, medicine, whatever was needed. It wasn't fancy or fast, but it was strong, steady, and trusted. And once it started flying, it didn't stop. After the war ended, the clouds were filled with leftover planes like the DC-3. Tough old birds, they flew in storms, dropped supplies, dodged bullets. Now they were back in civilian clothes, carrying suitcases instead of soldiers. These planes were reliable, no doubt, but they were tired, rattly, noisy. Some still had dents from combat zones. Inside, seats creaked, engines roared, and flying felt like riding a tractor through the sky. Europe was trying to rebuild roads, cities, railways, and air travel too. But it needed more than patched-up planes. It needed a fresh start. At the heart of this restart was Fokker, an aircraft maker that had been through the ringer. Their facilities had been bombed, their staff scattered. But they didn't just sweep up the rubble and fix what broke. They asked a better question. What does the next generation of flying look like? Forget war machines. People wanted peace in the sky, comfort, something smooth, simple, and quiet. Flying shouldn't feel like you're dodging clouds. It should feel like you're gliding through them. The old piston engines? Loud, rough, shaky. And the unpressurized cabins left passengers lightheaded and queasy. It was time for something better, cleaner, kinder. Fokker studied the DC-3 like a puzzle. What worked? What didn't? And slowly, a new kind of plane began to take shape, not for the rich, not for the famous, but for the everyday traveler. A plane that could take off from short runways and land where fancy jets couldn't. A plane that cared more about reliability than speed. In a world chasing faster and louder, Fokker leaned into calm and steady. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were trying to help everyone. And somewhere inside a dusty hangar in the Netherlands, the blueprint for a new kind of aircraft quietly came to life. The idea started small, just sketches on a desk. Fokker didn't want to build a giant plane. They wanted one that fit the towns, the runways, the people. A plane that flew like it understood your needs. So they started listening, not to big airlines, but to the pilots who flew DC-3s every day, to the mechanics covered in grease, to the passengers who just wanted a quieter ride. And what they heard wasn't fancy. It was simple. Give us a plane that doesn't shake, one that doesn't sound like a thunderstorm, one we can land on gravel and patch up with basic tools, something strong but gentle. Fokker's answer was turboprop engines. They weren't brand new, but they were cleaner, quieter, and smoother than the old piston kind. Rolls-Royce Darts became the power source, steady and proven from the British Viscount. Less noise, less vibration, big win. Then came the wings, high-mounted ones, like a bird landing on tall grass. That let the plane avoid scraping its belly on rough airstrips. It also made boarding easier. No stairs, no fuss. And the cabin, instead of bolting everything together, Fokker used something called redux bonding, a type of glue, but way stronger. It made the plane lighter and tougher. Inside, the cabin was pressurized. That meant no more popping ears or dizzy spells when climbing. Seats were set 2 on each side with a wide aisle, so even the tall folks didn't feel crammed. Windows were oval-shaped, simple, sturdy, and nice to look out of. The design didn't scream speed or style, but it whispered trust. Every part of the F-27 was chosen for a reason, and that reason was people. And in 1953, long before it ever flew, they gave it a name: Friendship. It was a simple name, easy to say and remember. Fokker wasn't trying to make it sound fancy. They just wanted something straightforward for a plane that would do regular jobs in everyday places. Fokker didn't rush the Friendship into service. They spent years shaping it carefully, listening to pilots, engineers, and passengers, and reworking each detail until it felt just right. The earliest versions tested piston engines, but those were too loud and rough. So they switched to Rolls-Royce Dart turboprop engines already proven on other aircraft. Not flashy, but smooth and reliable. The first prototype, PHNIV, flew on November 24, 1955. It performed well, but the team still found areas to improve. They stretched the fuselage by about 3 feet to help with stability and seating, refined the tail, and strengthened the landing gear so it could handle short, uneven runways.
Across the ocean in the United States, regional aviation was having its own growing pains. Smaller airports were everywhere, but the planes serving them were dated, mostly leftover piston-powered aircraft from World War II. They were slow, noisy, and not especially comfortable. American carriers wanted something better, but building a brand new plane from scratch was costly and risky. That's when Fairchild, an American manufacturer, spotted the F-27. They didn't just admire it, they licensed it. And that move gave the Fokker Friendship a second life on a new continent. In the US, it was rebranded as the Fairchild F-27. Fairchild made tweaks to fit American requirements, things like updated avionics, extra cockpit instrumentation, and changes to interior layouts for local passenger preferences. But under the skin, it was still the same solid airframe. Fairchild later introduced a stretched version called the FH27. It was longer, more spacious, and had extra seating. For many U.S. regional airlines, this aircraft wasn't just an upgrade. It was their first proper step into the modern age of passenger flight. Pilots loved its handling. Passengers noticed the quieter ride, and maintenance crews appreciated how easy it was to keep flying. You wouldn't see the F-27 in flashy airport ads or major city terminals, but out in the smaller airports, from desert airstrips to snowy runways in the north, it was everywhere. It flew quietly, reliably, and often without notice. But that was exactly the point. The Friendship didn't need to stand out. It just needed to show up. And thanks to Fairchild, it showed up all across North America, one flight at a time. The Friendship may have started as a passenger plane, but it didn't stay that way. Operators saw something special in its simple design, and they got creative. Regional carriers needed flexibility. One day was people, the next was packages. Fokker responded with combi versions that mixed seating and cargo, all in one cabin. Some days the seats came out and boxes rolled in. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. Then came the pure cargo variants. These had roller floors, reinforced panels, and wide openings to load bulky gear. Whether it was mail, medical supplies, or fresh produce for a remote town, the F-27 flew it all. Fairchild stretched things further with the FH-227, a longer, more spacious frame and a load-friendly setup that suited American freight companies. Its performance in cold climates and desert conditions earned it trust across borders. Some countries saw a different kind of potential. Military versions took shape. Troop carriers, coast patrol aircraft, and reconnaissance platforms with radar and sensors. Bubble windows appeared on some for better visibility. Fuel range expanded. The Dutch Navy even got a version equipped for maritime surveillance, all built on the same F-27 foundation. Later on, Fokker developed the Fokker 60, a longer, tougher machine with a cargo door big enough to swallow pallets. It handled humanitarian missions, military duties, and more, all without needing fancy infrastructure. Every variant had its own story, but they all shared the same backbone: a sturdy airframe, a flexible layout, and the ability to fly where jets wouldn't dare, the quiet descent into obsolescence. By the 1980s, aviation had changed. New regional aircraft were entering the scene with modern tech, lower operating costs, and improved automation. The F-27, though reliable, began to show its age. Its analog systems and older engines meant higher fuel bills and more maintenance hours. Fokker saw the shift and responded with a refined version, the Fokker 50. It came with upgraded avionics, quieter engines, better fuel performance, and a sleeker look. But the market wasn't waiting around. Bombardier's Dash 8 and ATR's 42 and 72 models were faster, more efficient, and had broader customer support. Fairchild's U.S. license production of the F-27 ended. Airlines moved on, not because the friendship failed, but because something newer took its place. Even so, the F-27 didn't disappear overnight. Its simplicity, durability, and field performance meant it still had a role. In cargo, in training, in fringe regions where other planes couldn't keep up. But it was clear, the era of the friendship was winding down. There was no dramatic retirement speech, no banners, just fewer orders and a gradual exit from fleets that had once counted on it. By the time the final F-27 rolled off the line in 1997, over 780 had been built.